Hello, everybody. Welcome to MaximumLibertarian.com, the podcast here on YouTube, Rumble, X. I'm joined today by Mitchell Bupp, and we want to discuss the Iran war that's going on right now. That we know, what you know about it. Both of us served. You were in the Army. I was in the Navy.
I was in the Marines.
Okay, Marines. Gotcha.
No, that's all right. That's cool.
But
oh God, yeah, that's a hot topic.
Okay, a lot of people are blaming Israel, like Israel's pushing Trump to this level, because I think the last time me and you talked, I said the first term that Donald Trump had as a libertarian, I'm looking at it, it was about as good as you're going to get. I didn't really, I know he may have had a couple hiccups, but there really wasn't no real big wars. And I was like, okay, that's good. And then when the second term, I was like, all right, here we go. We're going to have a good show. And I tell you, it's been a complete cluster. And now we've got, and I've heard everything from last summer, when we did just the bunker bombs, or I guess that's what you call them. Yeah. And he was like, and then Israel immediately moved in when Trump got out and started to attack different sites in Iran. And it was like, holy cow. It's like, and Trump from sources, he was like, they don't know what the hell they're doing. None of them. So it's like, now we're right back into it. I don't think I think Saudi Arabia is the one pulling the strings. That's what I want to just say. I don't think, as much as I like Israel, it's not, I just have this gut feeling. No, what is your take?
Bottom line, it's Donald Trump. Okay. You can't blame Israel. You can't blame Saudi Arabia. You literally, you can blame Iran somewhat, you can blame all these people, but in the end, the shit comes down to who's the president and who makes the decision. Okay. It was a piss poor decision to follow Israel to the depths of what Donald Trump has. Okay. It's all Donald Trump. Because what they have done, what the deep state, what they couldn't do the first time in this psychological war that we live in, to convince somebody of something somehow. Donald Trump is enamored by his ego. Mm-hmm. And the deep state figured out that was the tool to get Donald Trump to be this world peacemaker, in Ukraine, which was, that's in the rear view mirror. How long ago, when Donald Trump said, we will have peace, or, he moved on. Okay. And it's a different operation in a different part of the world. Now, there are all kinds of things that are moving parts of all of this. You have to consider, too, that it's alleged. I don't know how of a practicing Jew Donald Trump is, but it's alleged that 4-5 years ago or more, he actually converted to Judaism. Now, is that true? I don't know. And if it is Donald Trump himself violating, the Foreign Agent Registries Act, as, acting as, no different than Joe Biden did, but Joe Biden worked as a puppet for the CIA and the deep state. His whole presidency was. This war, this continual war against Iran is it's how should I say, it's going to go sideways, just because there's no way that we can really put effective boots on the ground to stop them from bombing or launching drones, within that narrow strip of the Hormuz Straits. Okay. The Kars Island that they're talking about taking landing Marines or the 81st Airborne on is in the the western part of, I'm trying to think, and that's is that the Sea of Arabia, or is it? I don't know the geography so great, but deep into the Gulf, right by Kuwait and Iraq, is near where this Karj Island is. And there's other multiple islands that are actually that is in the Hormuz Straits that they want to occupy. Okay. Some of these are, not real big pieces of rocks out in the sea. So it's not a very, they came up with this thing. If you noticed last week, they pumped all this up, and then all of a sudden, like towards the end of the weekend, they started saying, well, we're not talking about immediately because, well, they have their airborne alert troops that are and air alert troops in the Marines, and they have elements of our paratroopers and 82nd Airborne and elements of the Army literally on call, one division and then one battalion. They will rotate down through the battalions who is on this short end of this stick. A great example is that back in 1980, I think it was 1980, the Muriel boat lift out of Cuba, they came in our squad bay, turned the lights on at 4:00 in the morning and said, Bupp, you go down to the Jeep, go down to the motor pool, get the Jeep in the trailer. By 6:00 in 2 hours, I was loaded and driving to Cherry Point, North Carolina, to the Marine Corps Air Station, and we're backing onto an aircraft, backing the Jeep and trailer up on the aircraft, and before 8:30, 9 o'clock, we were off the air, flying to Key West, Florida, down into the Naval Air Station for the Cuban refugees that were coming in. Right. So, you really never know when the stuff is going to go on. Also, when this is kind of a cycle stuff for me, because when they attempted to rescue the hostages in Iran the first time, that day they had us in the field doing hostage rescue maneuvers. That day that they were doing it, we were on the 24-hour air alert, and instead of sending one contiguous unit, they had these specialty units from different branches that cobbled together in an attempt to rescue the hostages in Iran, and that failed when in the sandstorm. So yeah, it's a lot of different stuff. It's so many different things that are moving on the ground. Listen, we can bomb the living snot out of everybody, but to really stop it, you have to occupy the ground. And we couldn't do it where? In Afghanistan. I mean, we took $1 trillion and how many American lives to replace the Taliban with the Taliban? Okay. Right. I mean, it's another bankster war, So but it all comes back to Donald Trump. He has abandoned his America First principles, and he is essentially, his ego and this idea that he wants to get this Nobel Peace Prize, and it's, I just think that when somebody gets inside somebody's brain, because we live in this psychologically driven world today, that is extremely difficult, one, to find your way through it without the undue influence of everything and everybody that's around. And the worst part of it is, if you're brutally honest about all of it, you literally get crucified by both sides in the public. Believe me, right. I know I'm standing there in the middle. So yeah.
Do you think they got into his head once you had the assassination attempt back in August of 2024, and then you had just a few months later, you had the guy down on the golf course?
Yeah.
Because to me, that seems like something. I always remember the joke they always talked about with, I can't remember who made the joke and which president, but they walk in and they said, here's a picture of Kennedy. This is where we had the guys set up. If you don't do what we say, this is what's going to happen to you.
Mhm.
That to me, because like we still don't know about the kid in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
That's so strange to me that we don't know nothing about it. It's more like confusing. And that, to me, do you think maybe that was
That's
where they got
intentional.
him?
That's intentional. Listen, this information overload, this I want to call it a diopic. This multiple viewpoints pushed into one way is meant to confuse. It's not meant to clarify and find the truth. And this is what we find with government. And you still have, Donald Trump, God bless him, whatever he's doing. If he thinks he's doing, God's work, I'm not so sure about that. But the Jeffrey Epstein, Mossad, Israel spy files, run by the Rothschild bankster dynasty, that still is here. That still is the elephant in the room.
Right.
And, everything. Remember, they will take you to war before they tell you the truth. I mean, dudes, that's just the unfortunate reality that we live in these high palaces, of this modern day monarchy that we have. I mean, it boggles the mind that people like here in Virginia with the let's just say, tell everybody right now, just vote hell no on gerrymandering by these crazy Democrats. Okay. And they're standing there telling your face, we're going to rig the whole state because MAGA did it. I mean, no, MAGA's not doing it. You're doing it. And, furthermore, Democrats rack and pack and stack in districts illegal immigrants so they can count them in the census, so they can split the government up, and then you actually turn into what would amount to be a supermajority, because you have a bunch of people that are counted in the redistricting by the census. You have a 5 to 20% in some places of illegals and non-citizens that are counted in the censuses. And when they are counted in these redistricting areas that we have in Northern Virginia, where they have essentially, in Richmond and Virginia Beach, they have racked and packed and stacked, everybody they can in these zones. What you end up with is 10% or so of the people that can't vote. And then you have this shrinking pie of representation, of real representation within the state. And it drives, and because of the way it is statistically gerrymandered, there ends up a super majority,
Right.
for Democrats. And, the federal government is completely lost to the deep state. Okay. 85% of Americans want voter ID, and none of the mother effing sons of bitches can pass it. All right. You can only say, how should I say it? You can, it's going to be a point where people will just say, F you, like myself. Okay. I have been federal tax protesting since they screwed the people on housing in the housing crash. Okay. When the
Okay.
government, when the banks threw away all the documents that they were supposed to keep and then created forgeries and then presented them in court as if they were real. The federal government and the Department of Justice, along with the Virginia Department of Justice, literally made a deal with the bankers that they would get away with all this forgery, and then they would still foreclose on literally hundreds of thousands of homes in the United States, which they ended up not being able to, how should I say it, to legally process because they threw away their paperwork. It's maddening. It's maddening. And the people get short shafted every time government turns around. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat issue. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican issue. It turns out to be this monopoly that they have created and that they keep control of. They limit participation too. So, yeah.
With the real quick, I've seen it and I hadn't even thought about it, but that is the Democrats' slogan for the gerrymandering is, hey, we got to rig the election.
Yeah, no, here.
And to be fair, because they're doing it, we got to do it. And I've paid attention to it, and when you said it, it finally clicked to me. It's like, and people are actually going, yeah, we've got to do
it. We've got to do it. It's against MAGA.
Yeah,
the MAGA Nazis. Anything can count. Now here, I don't know if you've seen any of these in your area. Let me see if I can get this tilted right. This is a mailer that my friend here in Henry, Virginia got at their house. And it's it's from California. So, and it essentially says that same thing, we basically have to outrig MAGA's rigging the gerrymandering.
Rand Paul said it a few weeks ago, and I've said it before. Maybe you've heard it. He was on Meet the Press, and they were talking about the redistricting in different states. And he said one of the things that will happen if you take away voices, that's when you bring violence. And I do feel that they've been pushing the violence. That's what's getting people so fed up, because they're seeing that we can go out and vote, and it's like an uphill battle, and I'm going to lose because this district is so blue or it's so red. They've gerrymandered it, and that's where you get the violence. And I thought that was a really good point. And she was shocked to hear this, but I do think that's something that people better start focusing on, that you're going to cause a problem here,
Oh, absolutely.
And I what do you think, real quick, before we go back?
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we just had the No Kings rally this past Saturday.
Okay, yeah.
Of course, it's coming out everywhere that different. Well, you can pay to get protesters. I had a gentleman on my podcast talking about his company is called Crowds on Demand, and you can get as many people as you want to a few. He told me he had a wedding. He someone from overseas was bringing his family over, and they wanted to show that their family, they had a whole bunch of friends, so they had a wedding with a bunch of paid actors in it. And I started thinking, like, on one hand, it's like, okay, well, the politicians are fake. This whole setup is
song
fake.
And dance.
Now,
song and dance. It really is.
Now it's like, okay, what's the difference of making these paid protesters? Is it now they're just all, now everything's fake. It's almost like watching, like on Instagram, and you see me with the 6-pack abs in front of the Ferrari, and it's all phony,
It's all rented. Yeah. I'm in my rented airplane that I'm flying out on for about 10 minutes of shots for
Right.
$100.
There was a thing on Twitter too. The lady was holding her phone and she was doing different accounts, and
Yeah.
so that people would be like, they're paying her to take a picture, and they would post it to their account so it would look like they were closer to the stage. I mean, it's all phony, you know.
Yeah, it is a charade,
And and
this world we live in.
and I think what I'm having issues with is like this one at the No Kings rally is so phony as is,
Yeah.
because what they talk about, they're gladly allowing our dear governor to steal their guns, the rights. They're like, this is insane.
Queens are okay. Queens are okay.
Yes, queens are okay. And I'm just curious, and then I'm also seeing the the sickle and hammer communism.
Oh yeah.
They have done a bang up job. Why has liberty not been able to get into the people's minds? But communism and socialism has done. I mean, they did a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Oh yeah,
I think,
absolutely.
you know, they ran this race. They took over the schools. They took over this. They took over that. And this is it's finally coming to fruition. What about liberty here? Freedom, you know, or is it there and people are just too lazy to go out?
Well, there's very few liberty-minded billionaires. That's what I would say. Okay. I mean, the Davos, the World Economic Forum, I mean,
Right.
They don't go there just to play games. They go there to plan the world. And we're supposed to sit back and, and just be happy with our piece of the stage. Okay. But, not you and I out here, but I'm talking about every person has, without living in a 15-minute city. And, being allowed only 2 chickens on your house while you live here in Franklin County or some stupid shit. I mean, it seems like our here in Franklin County, it seems our board of supervisors has had a kind of a brain meld with whatever is going on in Northern Virginia. And it's causing a lot of pushback here, and it's just trying to turn Franklin County, or these the counties here in Western Virginia that are country counties, trying to turn them into a big city nanny state is gonna go well, let's just say it's not going to work. And you may be able to work your way in for a few years and but sooner or later, you do get exposed. And, I don't trust local government the same way I don't trust state or federal government, because the fact is, while I'm not an anarchist, I'm more of I'm this passionate constitutionalist, but nobody gives a shit about the Constitution, because the courts and the Supreme Courts have essentially said, well, it covers, everything, from diapers to depends to death and birth to death. I mean, what freedom is left? Just this space, between, our frontal cortex.
Right.
And that's all been mapped and programmed and everything else. I don't know if you're aware, but Kash Patel and the FBI is just catching a bunch of shit for using, having big contracts with all of these data mining programs that essentially, collect all the information through cookies on the internet. And it's all for sale through third-party vendors. And Kash Patel has told the Senate that we will use all legal tools. And, all of the rights and everything, everywhere is essentially has been signed away somehow in an agreement in fine print somewhere. And it's a sad, disgusting thing. That's another reason why, why a revolution.radio the platform over there that I help manage, is so important because we are 100% listener free. Listen, we have no ads at all except some banner ads that hosts put up. Um, Otherwise we run on donations, and we just offer time slots for free. And it, you know, I mean, it's YouTube is and Rumble and all these platforms have all these different things. I mean, I got flagged this week. Was it this week or later last week? Um, on Facebook because I've started using the Rumble Studio
Uh,
more and sharing the stream more. I used to just stream right on Rumble and over to and simulcast on Revolution Radio. But what I've done is I've included locals and Facebook and YouTube on in all those streams. I had just recently gotten my YouTube channel back. It had been suspended because I talked about COVID. So I mean, I won't be surprised if I get suspended for talking about these people that have a superiority complex that seem to reign in the Middle East. On both sides of that ideological stupidity of a so-called a civilization on this planet. Ah, man, it hasn't advanced too damn far. Just the bombs and the bullets have changed. So no enlightenment has really taken place there as far as I can see, but that's my personal opinion. I don't hold you or libertarians or anybody to my what I see, and I have to call genocide on both sides in the Middle East. Okay. There was an idea that a Japanese member of parliament or somebody came out, and a foreign minister or somebody recently released a video that said if Israel uses a nuclear weapon against Iran, then it will essentially be erased from the planet. Okay, now how that would happen, I don't know. But Donald Trump is making is making all these claims and plans and everything else. And truth is, Donald Trump had to quit communicating with the leaders of Iran, because as soon as one would fire up his cell phone and talk to somebody somewhere, he would get bombed.
Right.
So they've killed what, 32 to 38 of down the leadership in rank in Iran. And then you have these, I mean, what kind of strategic idiot do you have to be to say, and then say, well, I don't know who I'm going to negotiate with. Well, no shit. This idea that Donald Trump believes that he can send his elite troops in the way they got Maduro. He can send them into the one of those secure bunkers in Iran, where they're holding this 100 kilos of enriched nuclear material that they have. Now, I guess I'm scratching my head because it's alleged that Donald Trump had destroyed it once, and maybe twice. So the other part of that is, Iran told the U.S. negotiators that, look, we have 62 pounds of enriched uranium, up to I think it's 60 some percent. And I don't know how far they had to go yet to make it, to weaponize it into a bomb. But, they essentially told the U.S. this was about a month and a half. Well, no, actually, since we've been bombing them for a month. So this would have been about 2 months ago when we were supposedly negotiating and Trump said, we'll give you 10 days to do whatever. And then they bombed in 5 days.
Right.
But it's, this nuclear material is, I mean, understand that Pakistan is negotiating with the U.S. And Israel, allegedly, mostly with the U.S. I don't think Israel has already come out and said multiple times, we will not put a boot on the ground to help U.S. troops if they decide to take in parts of Iran. They've already said that.
Well, so did Saudi Arabia. The crown prince told us that told Trump, he was urging Trump, you got to finish this regime change. And he's like, if you got to send in troops, send in troops. It's like, well, why don't you send in troops? You're the one that understands the culture and the region and all that stuff. But same way with Israel. If you want it. Now, Israel, they went into Lebanon, southern Lebanon, they said?
Yes, they have. They've actually taken some of those towns and raised those Israeli flags over them and have started to annex parts of Syria and also parts of Lebanon.
What do you expect is going to happen there? If you have like the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, I mean, my gosh, what's going to happen?
Well,
what do you
it's like this,
happen
Brian. I guess it's like this to me. Okay, I'm a veteran here, and it's like this: if some asshole comes from 10, 20, whatever miles down the road, and believes he's going to attempt to murder my neighbor and steal his land and his house without getting shot. I understand. I've watched videos on both sides treating each other so horrible. It's not even funny. Okay.
Right.
So, I have this general idea and this general policy, really in honesty, you can't change the cultures, and you just shouldn't touch it with a 10-foot cattle prod. And that includes Israel. So, but we have this historical misconception about Christianity and Judaism and all this other stuff. And that is that's a complicated thing to get into. And I really stay away from all that. I look at the actions of the people, and I don't give a shit if they're Jewish or if they're Arabic or Arab or Christian or Islamic. The actions that they have and how they treat other people is just horrendous. I mean, most people don't even know there's been 50 to 100,000+ Christians slaughtered in Nigeria. That's just, in the last 6 months to a year.
That went off the map real fast because I remember that came up, and then there was talk of, wasn't Trump talking about going in there and doing something about it?
He talked, I can't remember, and then he went. Then it's the
same way with, like you said, with Ukraine. It just disappeared off,
right?
And it's still going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're seeing so much with this Iran. I just want to know who was telling him. He must have thought that he was just going to do
Howard
the Maduro thing, like you said.
Do have you heard of the name Howard Lutnick?
Yeah.
His name. Okay, now understand Howard Lutnick and there's another one or two other people have essentially got Trump in a bubble, and they're pushing all this all these, I want to call them ideas, but all this intel and all this information at him, and what I look at is we're getting into this range where human psychology takes over, and this an idea of this independent minded person goes away, and I explain this as meetings, briefings, and memos. Okay, it's like a college student going into an immersive course, and literally getting bombarded. Just think about it, 10, 14, probably 20-hour days sometimes for Donald Trump, dealing with information that is coming in, put on his plate. He's got to try to figure it out and then move along, because there's so much you can't stop. You're just trying to do the best you can. Sooner or later, you become acclimated to not just that data and information, you become acclimated. Your mind becomes synthesized with the answers that you're being provided. Once you look through it's like it's classic textbook brainwashing, in all honesty. Okay. And that's what happens to every president that gets in there and says, I'm going to do this. And it's like, the road to hell. It was paved with good intentions. And he got in there and he was literally in this cycle like this. And he never got out of it. Now, can Donald Trump, because understand, it's my belief and it's my idea that the mega movement, the make America great again movement is beyond Donald Trump. Okay. That while Donald Trump may have been a piece of it and an inspirational part of it to bring people together, the truth is, we can take the wins that we get from Donald Trump and leave him to his failures. Because the truth is that while the deep state in all of the conspiracy cases and all of the stuff that has been pushed against Donald Trump, it has completely failed. What has diminished Trump in the face of his supporters and in the view of most people is the fact that is Donald Trump. It's not, basically back to the first questions is, who is ultimately responsible for all this? And it is the president of the United States that has made bad decisions. When you look at, if I remember correctly, when you look at it, when all this kind of started, Tulsi Gabbard was kind of kicked to the curb because says, well, she wasn't wholly on board, and there's documented evidence from prior studies about wars against the mullahs in Iran and how they go sideways. Of course, you still have the White House touting that Donald Trump said 4 to 6 weeks, and they say it's only day 29 or so. So pay attention. We got 2 more weeks before our window supposedly said whatever. And I just think right now what I'm seeing online is a massive propaganda effort to how do I want to say it, to get Iran to just unconditionally surrender. Okay. And that you're seeing all of these, I call them spoof videos, these AI videos. It's all calculated propaganda. Okay. It used to be, think about it. It used to be, we called it fake news. Well, we have to understand that fake news is kind of inert cartoon style news that doesn't have impact on you and your life and everything. And so we have to understand that it's propaganda that is being pushed. And if we look at how the psychology is being structured, it's as if you're being forced to pick somebody, in the Iran, U.S. Israeli war. Okay. They want you to force you to pick, with the Arabs, with Islam, or with the United States, supposedly, which is basically choosing with Israel. It's a false dichotomy. I think it's a sad thing that the people are getting propagandized into this idea. There are a lot of people that are waking up and that understand that, so many false cries of anti-Semitism. I mean, did you see? I don't know if you saw, but Ted Cruz had put a quote out, something stupid like, if you say Christ is king, right here around Easter, if you say Christ is king, that's like an anti-Semitic talk, to a Jew.
He put that out?
Huh?
Ted Cruz put that out?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, no shit. Okay. I mean, I was just like, I was like, really, what the is he really, Ted?
Right. Huh. Well, I saw that meme where it was like all the like it said MAGA from 2016.
Right.
And then it said never Trumpers are now the MAGA, Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz.
True. That's true.
Yeah.
True. Trump has come out in attempt to replace MAGA with essentially Zionist shills.
Right.
I mean, that's what I call it. I mean, there are so many. It really sucks because being a conspiracy theorist, so many of these things are coming true, and there's so many other rabbit holes that are being exposed. Like how many people know that Erica Kirk is a Jeffrey Epstein girl?
I've never heard that. Where did you hear that one from?
Well, that came out right out of the Epstein files.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there, and Jeffrey Epstein was essentially, told people that he worked for Evelyn Rothschild, and that's who his boss was. And, understand though that, Jeffrey Epstein was involved with the BCCI scandal and other scandals that took banks down in the late 1980s. And, that was all of that was tracked back to where? CIA money and CIA scandals. And, Jeffrey Epstein continues to walk through there. And, with all of the evidence and all of the stuff that is coming out, I mean, I'm sorry to believe a government is,
that was one of the first.
It's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, and that was one of the first layups that Trump could have easily have done. Yeah. He would have just signed the paperwork. Now, and then immediately he talks about releasing the files. They even have the phony picture with all the influencers with the notebooks coming out of the White House.
Bunch of clowns.
You could have easily have just signed the paperwork, released it. Now, granted, he said a lot of people are going to get hurt. I get that, but you just got to you got to burn it to the ground sometimes. And the problem is where you might get, like, I know Chris Tucker, the comedian, was he flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane, and he just went from like New York to like Florida or wherever. Jeffrey Epstein has a lot of connections with inside that political world, the entertainment world. So in turn, Chris Tucker's in the Epstein files, but then so in turn, it's almost like being a sex offender,
who never touched a child. Yeah, it really is.
And the reason I bring that up, the reason I bring up the sex offender is I know of a guy who was 18. This was years ago, back in the 90s. He was 18. He was fooling around with a 16-year-old, and she said, "Oh my!" They got caught. The parents, she's like, he was, it was against my will. So they went to the police department, and
Yeah.
they started statutory rape.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then she comes back and was like, look, it was legal. I was down for it. Well, they go back to the police department because it's 18 and a 16-year-old. It's not like a child. Well, they're like, well, it's in the system. He's now on the sex offenders list.
Yeah.
So if you say sex offender blank, it's like, you don't think, oh, he was 18, she was 16, or whatever. You think of the most horrific thing out there, And
No,
in
I
turn,
agree.
Chris Tucker on the Jeffrey Epstein plane, everyone goes, oh my gosh, Chris Tucker was down at the plane, but he really wasn't. And I can get that, but boy, I would have released that. That was so easy. And then he was coming out with the silliness of it's what was it, Democrat hoax? And
yeah, the Democrat hoax.
It's like, what are we talking about here? This is insane. I don't know. It still boggles my mind. It boggles my mind with the war that he has now got us into. And I don't know if you just saw now Rob Schneider, the comedian from SNL,
I know.
different thing. Okay. He came out and said that we need to reinstate the draft because of this. And it's because of these good freedoms that we have in the United States. Let me pull it up real quick. I got it saved here. So it says that for the U.S. to meet all of its freedoms, let me get it right there in my eyes, must restore the military draft amid Iran war. These freedoms that we cherish do not come without a cost. Now, this is a man that's not going to have to face the draft. So, yeah, let's rah-rah the draft on, And this would be insane. And down here, he talks about how it'll get kids in shape. Let's see. Claim reinstating the draft. Young Americans would be put into rigorous physical training course that they could use for the rest of their lives. Are you insane? We're going to go over there to the war? That's the best route. Come on now. Now, I don't know about you. I don't like the draft. Now, I did hear I did read a report about when they were talking about removing it back in 72. They said one of the things about removing the draft is you're going to have certain people still continue to go into the military. And then there's going to be some people that's not even going to go into the military. So then if the demographic goes away, where you used to have the white guys, black guys, we all had the same. All right. Even though you were a Marine and I was in the Navy,
our lives depended on each other. And we fought together, and we were possibly or probably in some cases going to die together. And the thing is, that, if somebody doesn't want to be there,
right.
We had guys like that in my platoon. I mean, there were people that were regular. They were worse than shitbirds. Okay.
And they were signing up.
They didn't last. They didn't last long because we usually, after a blanket party, they usually, the sergeants and the gun, they moved them out. But
right.
We wouldn't. God, I'm going to get in so much trouble for this. We used to joke, and this is back years ago, if you had somebody like that, at least if they were in your foxhole, at least you had something to throw on a hand grenade if it came into the foxhole. Okay. God bless them, but hopefully you had a grenade some. But we really couldn't put up with a lot of that, for the simple fact that it would, listen, in the Marines, God, here we go again. in my particular platoon, okay, in
Mhm.
1st Battalion, 6th Marines, when we had our standard quota of people, it was about 140, 142. If we were going to on a float or, on a cruise to some place, or we were mounting out somewhere, they would send in a bunch of people real quick so we could get our numbers fattened up. But generally there was 115 to 125, in the mortars platoon that I was in. And frankly, 90% of us were potheads. And we actually, we would actually, we would march in formation in the morning, and and then they would break into squads and stuff to march, and we'd march down to the river and stand in formation, while everybody else marched around and smoke a joint. Um, yeah, but we we yeah, it was just it was crazy because you never knew what was coming down, and then some of the things we did was so basically stupid. Okay, I mean, we were when we went on a cruise, we went on a NATO cruise. We went actually to Norway, and we offloaded in Norway, and we went way up on this ridge, and they said we don't have any snow. They had 7 feet of snow in the ground. They're complaining they don't have any snow. Okay. So it was beautiful. It was just picturesque. We're set our 81 millimeter mortars up on this ridge above this fjord coming in. It's just so beautiful, blue, and all the white snow, and these Amtraks come in from the ship that was out, and they were supposed to land and go up the road and stuff, and they got stuck right there where they were supposed to pop up on the road. There was a 6-foot bank, and the first one didn't make it, and they all sat there, and here come the Harrier jump jets. The British were supposedly the Russians, the aggressors, and it was absolutely beautiful. But these guys would have been blown to smithereens. Watching these jets make simulated bombing runs on these guys, and a Norwegian general was standing over here talking to some colonel, American colonel or something, and he says, "Well, all your troops are dead. Are you going to go home?" Yes, yeah, and it was like it was like crazy, but you know, we always fought, because 81's platoon, they've always put us up as the aggressors against all the grunt companies.
Uh-huh.
And so we had quite a list of guerrilla tactics that we would use, and some of it was, um, you know, um, some of it wasn't as some of it wasn't very safe for the other people, but I don't know. It's just training to. It was all training to us, and you know. Watching, we used to go out with our mortars and shoot white phosphorus smoke mortars to mark for airstrikes.
Uh-huh.
So we go out to the ranges so the air wing could practice on the weekends, mostly seemed to be. And man, I tell you, I would not want to be on the incoming of some of the stuff that I've seen. I mean, but I've seen bombs literally dropped. Luckily they were far enough behind us, that they didn't hit us. But we had to go put the fires out that they started. They were only 2 miles, I think, premature or something. It was a long time ago, and it was a lot of crazy stuff that went on.
Right.
Um, and if Donald Trump believes that they can literally play master of disaster you know, in these war zones, he's, you know, they've miscalculated how many times, you know, since, I mean, Vietnam and forward. I mean, come on. Now,
Well,
Donald Trump has said they're going to take Cuba. He just said that yesterday. We're going to, you know, we're going to take Cuba if we have to.
I know we're closing up the show here,
Okay.
and it just thought about it. You know, was listening to someone talk, and they said that what this really is a war with China because China gets the oil from Venezuela and they get it from Iran, and if we take over, we nothing's really changed from my understanding down at Venezuela yet.
Right.
But up, nothing. Obviously, we know what's going on in Iran. So in turn, but if we could choke out that energy to China, that's really the war that we're fighting. And I thought, okay, well, I never thought about it that way, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that just, you know, the whole war is that. And this is a grand strategy to work to contain China. Okay.
Right.
However, you have to understand that yesterday it was 8 or 9 Pakistani tankers had permission and went through the Hormuz Straits. Today, the circle around, there were 2 Chinese shipping container ships, so these large ones that had been trapped in the Gulf there since it started. And they had tried to go out, and Iran asked them to go back, and they circled back around. Now they got permission, and they have moved through the straits now today. Mm-hmm. And there was also a Kuwaiti tanker that was taking on oil in Qatar, I believe, that was blown up today with a drone. The price is $2 million paid in yuan. That is what Iran is collecting. Not from everybody. There are some countries that they let use the Straits of Hormuz for free. I think Pakistan is one of those countries. But there is so much going on in that region. I mean, how many people know that Afghanistan and Pakistan are at full blown war? That Pakistan has had jets bombing Kabul. Was it Kabul? The capital of Afghanistan? Yeah. Okay. I think it is. I'm trying to remember.
Wasn't India and
Pakistan were fighting.
They were going at it a little bit, and then that calmed down or something.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that kind of has been mediated out. But evidently, Taliban fighters have been coming down and committing terrorist acts in Pakistan. So they had had a pretty big spat, a little bit of a spat, and I think like 150, 200 people were killed. And then this latest fighting, the latest fighting is alleged that they're to have killed more than 400 to 500 people. And it's artillery clashes and everything else is going on. So, will that settle down and mediate itself? I don't know. Right. Pakistan, as I said, Pakistan has agreed to mediate with the United States over Iran. I had this crazy oddball thought that, remember, Pakistan is a nuclear power. Okay.
Right.
What if Israel and the United States were proposed, which they would never agree, that Iran would give up all of its nuclear bomb dreams, and Pakistan will act as a nuclear umbrella guarantee to defend Iran. I mean, there was word several years ago that of course, you should be aware that that Saudi Arabia has now its own nuclear power plant. I don't
Right.
know if it's been fueled in an operation yet, but that power plant is the first step in Saudi Arabia taking possession of the nuclear warheads that they have already purchased from Pakistan. So yeah, it's
All right.
it's a lot of moving things that are going on, and to me, the worst parts of it is Jared Kushner is right there smack in the middle of it, and he's as bad as Hunter Biden at this point, literally money grubbing from the CIA, the deep state in the system, and and I guess that's the forewarning to anybody who would want to be president, to be aware that your children will be shoveled, money will be shoveled at them by anybody and everybody who's going to compromise them from beginning to end. So, it's a sad state of affairs, in all honesty.
Well, what a way to end the show. So, all right, we can see you and hear more from you on revolution.radio. What times your shows play? I know you have different.
I stream live 8 to 10 a.m. Mondays and Tuesdays and Thursdays and Fridays in the morning with the Revolution in the morning, which I cover basically news and information, and then I collate all of the week's worth of data into my Tuesday night show, 8 to 10 p.m. on Revolution Radio, Rumble, and all these other places, the Trump assassination files. And I talk about this political war against Donald Trump. And, while I do support Donald Trump, I do call him Donald Chump, because he has been found and weighed, measured, and found wanting, I guess is the best way to say it.
All right, my friend. I know there's a lot more topics we could discuss, and I know in the future weeks there will be a lot more to talk about. So I want you to come back and we can go over this again. And so thank you so much for joining me tonight. And you have a good night and good luck with pushing the revolution. You know what I'm saying?
Amen. God bless you, Brian. Thank you, and all the libertarians for what you guys do.